Yeah, I didn't see the work from home or the more virtual meeting life changing post COVID. So I figured might as well just leap in. So it looks like I'm going to be using it this quarter too, because I'm TAing. So
online.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if it's going to be hybrid or online yet. I'll probably do at least my office hours online just to make it a lot easier to access.
Yeah. I've been doing that, giving people both options. If they, I use the Google Calendar, and when they sign up, it tells you if you want Zoom, request it, and then I just auto send a room.
Nice. That's a good idea.
I prefer if they come to my office, of course, because I like office hours, but if you only need to see me for 5 minutes and it takes you 10 minutes to walk here and 10 minutes to walk back to your dorm room, it's just not worth your time.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I think we're good to go if everybody else is ready as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is this, number 25?
I think is it 25? I thought it was 24. Here I am not being
24.
able to count again.
I think last week was 24. But
ignore me. The numbers are hard. I just came back from lab, so my brain's a little fried. Numbers are hard. I just came back from lab, so fried. Numbers are hard. I just came back.
Good echo.
I think somebody has their microphone on.
Somebody has their microphone on. That might be coming from you, Gregor. That might be coming from you, Gregor.
Nice. Yeah.
Did that fix it?
Yeah.
Okay, phew. Yeah, I was starting to get a little lost in the endless chain of audio there. Starting to get a little lost in the audio there.
You want to just close the Twitch tab?
Do you have headphones? We're having some connection issues.
Yeah, it might just be microphone feedback.
Gregor, do you have any headphones that you could put on? If you want to use speakers, it's going to reverberate into the mic, cause an echo.
Okay, if I turn the volume way down, does this work?
Let's see.
Yeah, let's give that another test.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I think you fixed it. It sounds good to me.
I just turned the volume way down. I can hardly hear you guys, but if you can hear me, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll I guess play it by ear in the most literal sense and see if we need to do any more adjustment on the fly here. Amber's in chat saying this is number 24, so I don't know anymore. Who knows? 20-something. We're in the 20s. We're in the low to mid-20s for Ministry of Science episodes. Professor Q, can you go ahead and, I guess, introduce Gregor and sort of, how you kind of like introduced him to us in Discord? Like, why did you want to have him here as a guest?
So this one was kind of a selfish request because I'm very familiar with Dr. Matson's work. Dr. Gregor Matson is professor of sociology at Oberlin College and Conservatory. His research is at the intersections of gender, sexuality, social control, inequality, LGBT studies, gentrification, prostitution, and he has written a number of pieces on the importance of the gay bar and is a contributor to my edited volume on gayborhoods. And so I kind of wanted to invite him on because I know him through his work, but I haven't interacted with him like on a face-to-face level. So this is really kind of nice for me because I get to, ask him about his work and really kind of talk to him as a colleague. So I'm super excited. And he's actually also one of the nicest guys I got to work with on that project. And a great writer.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to sort of, I guess, advertise about yourself before we get started in the discussion, Gregor, that your colleague hasn't covered in that very thorough introduction?
I have a book forthcoming in 2023 called Who Needs Gay Bars, out from Redwood Press.
Ooh, yeah, definitely. When there's a link that we can share to plug that, give it to Dr. Connor here, and we can plug it for sure. If it's not out yet, we can't plug it right now, but we wish we could.
Yeah, no worries. I don't have a pre-sale yet.
Got it.
So maybe
go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe that's a good place to start. Like, tell us about your book. Like, what's, who
does need gay bars? Yeah.
So it started because my favorite bar here in Cleveland, I live about 45 minutes outside of Cleveland, and that's my closest gay bars. And it closed in very end of 2014, 2013. And all the media reports about gay bar closures said it's gentrification. And we don't have gentrification in Cleveland. We have disinvestment. And, the national banking market takes the savings from the Rust Belt and sends them to the coasts because they get better returns on their money building multi-million condos, that are bought by international investment firms and not by people. So we don't have gentrification. And most of the media was coming out of big coastal cities with gayborhoods. And that is one place where you find gay bars, but it isn't the majority place where you find gay bars. Most gay bars are in ones and twos in cities scattered across the country. So I wanted to know what was going on with the change of gay bars, and was there, what was going on? So I took two tacks. One was there's a printed guidebook called the Damron Guide that's been around since 1964, and they were publishing annually up until 2019. And I got some great undergraduate research assistants, and we just went through and we counted the number of gay bars per municipality in the country at 5-year intervals, just to figure out how many gay bars were there and how many gay bars are there today. And that's where I came up with this statistic that more than 36% of them closed between 2007 and 2019. So we lost more than a third, just in an 8-year time span. And since then, we've lost about 15% every 2 years. So, we're down to about half as many as we had in 2007. And that's probably because of three things. One is, with rising LGBTQ equality, some members of the queer community feel comfortable socializing everywhere. And I think those are especially people who are conventionally gendered, are homonormatively boring, or white, middle-class white guys. And, we go drop our money anywhere, but we've taken the profit margins away from bars that other people may need more than us these days. So some of it is rising equality. Some of it is, there's been, since the debut of smartphone dating apps, the place of gay bars as having kind of a monopoly for getting to meet other potential romantic partners has sort of gone away. So now you can do that anywhere, sitting at the bus, sitting in class. We know, I've heard the Grindr beep go off in class before. And so there's another way that we've become perhaps untethered to physical spaces. But the last thing I would say is, if you read memoirs of LGBTQ folks from the 70s and 80s, they were going to the bars multiple nights a week because TV was boring. There was no queer content. hardly any queer content even on television or in the movies. And so if you wanted to see queer people, you would go to the bar and listen to the entertaining fights between people or the flirtations or whatever. And now you just have to pull up TikTok or YouTube or Netflix or HBO Go or Hulu or any other number of streaming services where you can get high quality queer content all the time. And so I would say that bars are now competing with our devices for our attention. So I set out on a couple of road trips. I put almost 10,000 miles on my car. I went to 39 states. I interviewed gay bar owners and managers in more than 39 states, just to figure out, what are the bars doing that are thriving? What's going on with the bars that are struggling? And in the course of doing this, probably, I don't know, a quarter of the bars that I did interviews with closed in the course of doing the research.
Damn.
That's awful.
Wow.
But I'm writing it up as a book, and it's supposed to be a popular book. And I profile 38 of the bars because I'm extravagant and couldn't leave anybody out. So go ahead, Chris.
So there's a lot of I actually don't know the sexuality of our audience. So but I assume there's some straight people out there. Maybe you could articulate better than I can, or at least, talk about why is it important that you would want to hang out at a bar? I even have to remind my dissertation advisor about this when we talk on the phone about the importance of the gay bar, because to him going to a bar is just a totally different thing.
So it's maybe a historical accident, but the only place where you can reliably find other LGBTQ plus people in public, in person, is in bars. And there's historical reasons for the fact that lots of people lived with their families in the early 20th century. And so it was through nightlife that you had a sphere away from work and away from home where you could cultivate relationships that were outside of those sort of staid, buttoned up places. But if you were also members of a community where most of us are not born to LGBTQ plus parents. So to be queer, you have to be exposed to other queer people. I mean, yeah, you can have the desire by yourself. But if you want to learn how to realize that desire, or how to be good at sex, or how to find things funny, or how to learn how to flirt, then you need other queer people, other members of the community. And it has been for a very long time that the only reliable place to do that was in a bar. Other communities have churches or restaurants or food markets or families. We don't have those things for us. We've had bars. And so the fact that we've become a little more untethered to these physical spaces, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, of course, it's good that people don't feel that they need to be segregated and secluded into one part of the world. One of the things we've wanted in liberation was freedom. But on the other hand, go ahead.
Are you so this is kind of answering a question from chat about the role of gay marriage. Do you think gay marriage has played a role in kind of normalizing things and taking the bars out of the equation?
I don't know that married people were ever going to bars that much to begin with, and people shacked up even before gay marriage was legal. So I would say that marriage is just an indicator of rising acceptance, rather than that suddenly sad homos drank and now happy homos buy houses. I don't think it's as direct an equation as that.
I love you. We would be such good friends if I lived in Cleveland. Oh my God. I talk to people, I live in a college town, kind of mid-Missouri. So whenever I talk to people about it, I talk to them. For me, it's I call it coming up for air, right? I just got back from DC. I marched in the Pride Parade. and like went to the bars and stuff. And, you know, you get this kind of, for me at least, this injection of like queerness. And I kind of feel like I reclaim a piece of my like queer identity that way. I don't know if that's same for you or like if other people have articulated that.
I think it varies by people. I mean, there are a lot of queer people who hate the bars, and there are good reasons to be skeptical of a community that is organized around physical places that only serve substances. And so for people in recovery or people who have fraught family histories with alcohol, you know, I'm not an uncritical celebrator of bars. It's just, it's what we've got. I was not that comfortable going to gay bars until like well into this project. And I'm well past middle age. And I always found going to gay bars scary. They were anxiety inducing. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I didn't know where to stand. I drank too much to counter the anxiety. Now I can do it.
Yeah. I was like the part that it's a bar is so interesting to me because it's like, especially since it age restricts too, right? So I'm curious about like the age gap between maybe like someone that's just graduated high school at 18, but they're not old enough to go to bars. Like what happens to that community? Because it sounds like the what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like a breakdown of just a community rather than just like the bar itself. It's the bar is the staging place, but it's the breakdown of the community that happens afterwards.
Yeah, and almost all the bar owners said, like, you know, you can drink at home. Mm-hmm. And it's the other things that the bars offer that make them special. So it's the performances, whether that be drag or burlesque or comedy. It's the fundraisers. I mean, gay bars have been, well before GoFundMe existed, gay bars have been holding fundraisers for people's top surgery or for their burial expenses. So yeah, a lot of the community events, and in most parts of the country, there isn't an LGBTQ plus community center to do this on a nonprofit basis. For good or bad, it's a bar that organizes the local pride celebration, that galvanizes the activism to oppose local politicians. You know, it's where the drag queens figure out which local library they should go do a drag queen story hour, you know, at.
Marcus, did you have something?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, if we're bringing up, you know, that, I guess that notion of like the diversification of like public places where queer people, you know, kind of congregate, where it's, you know, kind of moving away towards the bars, and you know, especially if we're kind of moving towards a more, you know, acceptance and normalization based thing, especially for trans folk. You know, places like libraries where there's going to be a lot of like drag reading events are going to, I think, I guess, pick up steam, so to speak, as places where they congregate. But I guess on that note, Gregor, like, especially in light of what happened with the Proud Boys visiting one of these drag queen reading events at a library, like, do you foresee, you know, any place in public, whether it's, you know, a gay bar or you know, a library or anywhere else, like do you see any, like, I guess, shifting towards one particular place in light of, you know, this increased spat of, you know, violence and anti-queer rhetoric?
I mean, bars have always been sort of victims of arson and terrorist attacks and hate crimes. So it's just one of the things about being public. It's just one of the dangers we face. And it shouldn't be that way. It is that way. I don't know that libraries are necessarily any safer. To me, what's interesting is in places that have a bar, you have a physical address and often a phone number of where you can call and get gay advice. Or you can, there's lots of evidence of parents calling gay bars to ask the bartenders what to do when their kids come out to them.
Oh, that's adorable.
There's no community center, or people don't have a PFLAG. And so, you know, I think queer events happening at libraries or popping up in the community or queer pop-up parties, these are all great. But, you have to be able to go out on the one day of the month that thing happens. And if you work in the service industry, as many of us do, then you're working Friday night, or if you've got care responsibilities and your ex doesn't come pick up the kids, then you miss out on a whole month's worth of your ability to reconnect with your people. And so that's one of the things about the physical spaces. I'm as guilty as anyone. We just finished watching Legendary on HBO downstairs, so I was getting my queer content here at home, but it's kind of empty calories, because at the end of the day, you're not connecting with other people. You're having a parasocial relationship with the people on the screen, and they are lovely people, but they don't know me. They're not going to look out for me. They're not going to help me find a job. They're not going to console me when I'm feeling down, except insofar as them being fabulous on the screen cheers my spirit, which it did.
So what are I'm curious about some events or historical places that you could use as a huge example for kind of the book and why gay bars are important. And I think immediately to Stonewall Inn, right, where the Stonewall riots happened. So I guess I was wondering if you could educate me on any other ones that had big historical events that happened.
Sure. Everyone knows the Stonewall Inn, and we credit this police raid on a gay club in New York City in 1969 as people credited it as the beginning of the gay liberation movement. Sociologists say it was the outcome of organization that had happened before, because bar owners had been at the forefront of gay civil rights for at least 15 years before 1969. So in Seattle, the Madison Pub resisted police. Graft. The police in Seattle had a price list of how much money you had to pay them off depending on what you allowed in your bar. So it was if you allow same-sex dancing, you owe us $150 a week. And if you allow same-sex kissing, it's $200 a week. And so it was this menu. And the owner of the Madison Pub took it to the press and to the district attorney and got the police sort of off the gay bar's back. The Madison Pub is still open. Similar things happened in Oklahoma City, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in Los Angeles, in Denver. So, because bars were the only physical place where you could reliably find gay people, it was also the place where politicians and police could reliably find gay people to persecute. But it also meant that when there were sympathetic district attorney or church leaders, it was a lot of church leaders who were sympathetic in the 1960s. It was often the bars that were the locus of that activism.
So I was just going to ask, have you been, I know you wrote about this, so I kind of know the answer, but what's the pandemic done to the scene?
So between 2019 and 2021, so from right before the pandemic into its first year, 16% of gay bar business listings went away. So if we infer that business listings are the same as actual establishments, we lost about 16% of them. And that compares to 15% off the previous 2-year period. So 2017 to 2019, we lost 15% of the bars. So ask a sociologist, you get two answers. On the one hand, we're seeing a pretty steady decline, and that decline, has gone right on through the pandemic. On the other hand, the decline didn't accelerate, which surprised me. I had expected something really cataclysmic, and instead the rate of decline stayed steady. And so I suspect that gay bars probably had an edge over straight bars in surviving the pandemic because they had communities behind them to rally around them, whether that be through crowdfunding or sending tips to their bartenders. Lots of bars went online. One of the small bright spots of pandemic was a lot of bars moved their entertainment offerings online. And so we had online drag shows, online burlesque shows. And for people with disabilities, these online offerings were more accessible than gay bars ever had been. And so friends of mine with disabilities were like, why didn't we have all this queer content before? Like, I want to see live people and I want to send little tips through Venmo. Like, and so that little bit of it has gone away. But the bars, I'm waiting to see what will happen in 2023. We'll do this gay bar census again and see what's happening. But I suspect that the decline is sort of continuing apace.
Yeah. I don't know. Grim, you got anything?
Yeah, so we've been having discussions on my channel about the kind of tactics in spaces that are supposed to be safe for LGBTQ folks. And you mentioned briefly about how presentation in these events is super important. Could you maybe walk me through, because I've been trying to find a good way of wording this, and how whenever we're putting on pride events or we're doing drag or we're doing like story hours for kids, what are the best practices for doing these kinds of events so that we aren't immediately flagged by right-wing groups and used immediately for their kinds of propaganda to, take away rights?
I don't know the answer to that. That's not where I thought you were going with this. Like, the rise of the right-wing stuff, and especially this return to the kind of language that was common when I was in high school, which was that all gay men were pedophiles. Mm-hmm. And now they've just recycled that old lie and made it into grooming. And now they're smearing trans people with it as well. And so, I understand that it shocks people. That's how I came out. Like, I have always been extremely careful to never be seen alone with kids. That's just part of the reality of being someone my age who came out then. So I feel badly that young people are now feeling that sensitivity, but I don't know how to undo right-wing propaganda. If I did, I would probably run for office.
Right.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating, like seeing the people talk, going to these library, story time events and talking about, like, they had this video about, like, oh, this is a drag queen that's like a groomer or whatever. There's a video to prove it, and it literally was the drag queen impersonating an SNL skit and doing it word for word. But it's grooming when the drag queen does it, and then it's just great when Natalie Portman does it. So it's totally fine. Sorry, Graham, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good, because I was just going to mention that we kind of brushed on this last week, and there are, like, super easy things to call out. Like, drag shows seem to be like the main staple of the right now. The easiest thing that they can call out. We are all familiar with, like, what drag is, performance, but there are just, like, elements within these in these shows that they latch onto, like the neon sign or, like, dollar bills on stage. Like, there's very, like, small little, like, cultural artifacts that they latch onto, and I don't know if it's within the interests of marginalized groups like queer and trans people to kind of cater their own performances and their own presentation to the more reactionary elements of the culture in order to, be more safe. I don't think that that's an honest way of them, presenting themselves. So I don't know the answer like you, I'm trying to, like, figure out, where is the best advice that we can give people. And I just haven't found an answer.
Well, I would just say, like, drag artistry is vast. Mm-hmm. It's much vaster than what you get to see on a popular reality TV series,
right?
That I also enjoy, all the franchises of it, including the international ones. But, the fact that some drag is raunchy and adult, and that some drag is fit for your local public library school time hour, like, mm-hmm. That's like saying that some art is adult and some art is not. Like, it's vast. So, I think you can't fight misinformation with facts. Instead, you have to sell to the middle. And the people who get squeamish and are like, well, I don't know, but I heard, like, those are the people you have to target, I think, because if you start adjusting to what the right is claiming and taking away dollar bills or taking away drag queen story hours, then you're letting the Overton window move in their direction.
True.
So then, like, I mean, something that comes to mind, I think, in response to that, right? If you're really trying to sort of appeal to, the middle people who are either, ignorant or, I guess, undecided. I don't know why it's, I guess, really framed like they're a voter, going to the polls and trying to like vote on the existence of people by allowing them to get hurt. But, I understand what you're saying, right? Trying to, show them that, hey, like these people can exist and you don't have to like hurt them, just let them be. But in that vein, like part of what comes to mind for me is if there are issues with bars going under, especially when we have, like you said, recycling of some of the old time rhetoric and violence that gets coupled with it sometimes. Do you think gay bars could see a resurgence as sort of like a safe place where they have like a physical protection from that kind of violence?
Yes. And I think Greg hit on this point earlier that I think really what the right is attacking right now is the existence of queer and trans children. And so bars have never been a place for them, and they're legally not allowed to be in them in most states at any time of the day. So it's the presence of gender diversity and sexual diversity among kids that's that's what they're going after, and they're using adults to do it, and they're doing it through the sports bans for transgender kids is also attacking gender diversity among kids. So, in a certain way, yes, the adults who are over 21 might find refuge in bars, but we need to work on behalf of the kids who can't come to bars yet. And there are states where 18 and up can go. For a lot of the bar owners, it's a real big headache and a financial hit to allow 18 and up into your bar. Usually you have to have more security. You got to have someone on the bar, on the door checking IDs really carefully. And 18-year-olds are not helping the bottom line because they're just drinking soda. So there are people who do it. And, one of the things I guess I hadn't realized when I started this was the degree to which I call it gay bars are not quite for profit. I mean, yes, they are profit-making enterprises and they have a responsibility to their bottom line to pay their bills and pay their staff and what have you. But everybody could make more money doing something else. You could make more money plunking it in a 401k. You could make more money selling beer to straight people. You could probably make more money, I don't know, going on Shark Tank. Like there's any number of things you can do that are more lucrative than running a gay bar. And so the reasons that most people are running a gay bar is to provide community. And it's one of the reasons why, where they're legally able, lots of owners do allow 18 and up into the bar.
So, all right, where's the highest concentration of gay bars at the current moment?
So it depends on how you measure concentration. If you look at it per capita of permanent all year residents, then the highest percentage of gay bars is in gay resort communities like
Palm Springs,
Provincetown, Fire Island, Sagatuck, Michigan, Russian River Valley, Guerneville, California. I'm missing one. Anyways.
Palm Springs.
Well, Palm Springs is big enough that there's a lot of bars. I mean, there's a lot of retired straight people who go to Palm Springs too. It's these other little gay resort communities that when you look at gay bars per capita, they really jump off the map. If you just look at what are the places that have big concentrations of bars, it unsurprisingly is New York and Greater Los Angeles. The two largest metropolitan areas of the country have the largest collection of gay bars. But I would just add that if you take all the gay bars in San Francisco, Chicago, and LA combined, it's about 92. And there's 93 towns that have just one gay bar each. So the modal sort of the modal way that you find gay bars is alone. The lone gay bar. That's the most common way to find a gay bar.
That's fascinating. Yeah, Greg, you look squeamish. Do you have a question?
Oh no, that was interesting. How many? I mean, it makes sense, I guess, how many places. I mean, it definitely feels like there's like an archipelago of big cities, so it makes sense that they would kind of congregate, I guess, in those areas. I'm curious how, like, what, like, especially now with Discord and stuff like that, there's such a community-driven way of interacting, like through Discord, for example, because there's video chatting, it's audio chatting, it's all built in, makes it really easy. Everyone has a Discord channel, so I'm curious, like, I guess, is there data on like how many people are maybe like after these bars close, like where do people go? Like that would be my question. Like what happens? Where does the community shift?
So one of the places it seems to be shifting is as gay culture has become untethered from gay bars, that means that parts of gay culture are popping up in places that are not gay bars. So there used to be a gay bar in Joplin, Missouri. In Joplin, the nearest gay bars were like 2 hours away. It was its own little island. And when it closed, drag shows popped up at a bar called Whiskey Dick's, which is what I would have called my gay bar. But, they were having family-friendly drag shows in a otherwise straight place. And this has happened all over the country. When the only gay bar that's within hours, if there are drag queens, they will make a show. In one place, they were doing it at a local bowling alley that had gay-friendly owners, and so the drag show was there. Drag happens to be the easiest way for me to detect it from far away. I don't know exactly what happens to the people who don't like drag, or, older folks who maybe don't stay up late at night. There's a new book that's coming out by Claire Forsty, and it's called Queering the Midwest. And Claire's research was on a town that had no gay bar and about the kinds of queer community that happened there. And it really was like word of mouth, like where you would find someone and they'd introduce you to someone else. And there was a bar that they called the queer bar, but it wasn't, it was interesting that everyone found it to be a queer bar, but it was just that queer people went there. I don't think it was queer owned or, wasn't necessarily doing queer things. So, one of the great things about LGBTQ plus people is when we need something, we take it. And so you have plenty of places all around the country where it's not a gay bar, it's the gay Denny's or the gay Waffle House or the gay IHOP. It's gay late at night. That's where the kids go. I went to the gay Denny's growing up.
Yeah, it's so cool. A lot of the drag shows that I go to now aren't like, I mean, there's not like a sign, right, that says like gay bar, but that it's not like what I would associate with it. It's just like a burger joint that goes in and has a drag show later, or there's a bar that like goes and turns into it. And I, talking to the drag queens like after the show and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, we just perform like everywhere. It's like not a, it's so cool how, I mean, I live in Southern California, so maybe that's one of the reasons why, but it's really prolific and it's just like such a cool like show. It's entertaining. I think because of the success of RuPaul's Drag Race, which I think is the most important and awesome TV show of all time. Not ironically, I will defend that position. And yeah, I think it's just like, it's just caught on. I feel like drag is really like mainstream now.
No, I agree with you. And, I think it's great that drag shows are happening everywhere. And I think it's great that you have places where, downtown fancy hotels are competing with each other. Who can have the nicest drag brunch? Like, okay. I don't know how long this will last. And I am really happy when I see that the drag that is spreading is not just the sort of glamorous gender illusion that sometimes is that's what people think of as drag. I like the sort of edgier, weird
monster drag. You're talking about glam, yeah, which is
Exactly. Or the drag kings who
Yes.
are fantastic and don't get a shine on TV
Yes.
yet.
Yes, it blows my mind that a cis white straight male got onto RuPaul's Drag Race before a drag king. I think that's ridiculous.
It's the same thing how like the attention is always on like trans women in sports, but we never have discussions about trans men.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Exact same kind of infantilizing or fetishization that we're seeing, you know?
I just went to it was advertised as a drag king show on Sunday. But when I went there, it was a drag performance art show. There was kinging, there was burlesque, there was gender fuckery of all kinds. Like it was really beautiful and indescribable in its beauty. So I totally, yes, I love my Michael Jackson impersonator, but I also love my weird, who is that and why? Oh, are they going to take that off? What's under there?
Yeah, look queens. It's one of my favorites. Oh my gosh, that is one of my favorite things about drag, where it's just like, that's why I feel like drag queens and drag in general, it's like superheroes, because they can embody something that's so out of human ideas and gender bending, and look like Monster or look queens are just, I love when they come out and your mouth just drops. You're like, oh my, wow, I don't know what to say. It just takes your breath away. It's really cool.
And beyond the aesthetics, I think what they model, at least for me, is a kind of a queer confidence. Like, maybe it's a confidence for everyone, but when you see someone out there who is so just supremely, I don't want to say full of themselves, but like just there and like taking up space and so happy to do it, it makes you happy and want to take up some space yourself. So that's why I find drag inspirational.
Yeah, I like to say I was raised by drag queens when I lived in Las Vegas and Indianapolis, because I always found myself running with them, for better or worse, right? Those queens can drink. Don't let that fool you. So what about girl bars? What's like, have you thought about maybe looking into girl bars, or have you looked into girl bars in your work?
Yeah, I interviewed lesbian owners of bars, trans owners of bars that serve queers and lesbians. The Lesbian Bar Project was this really successful campaign that came out during COVID. It was sponsored by Jägermeister, of all things.
Wow.
I didn't know that Jägermeister was the lesbian shot, but it is. And they raised, hundreds of thousands of dollars for what they identified at first as 15 lesbian bars in the country. And now I think their list is 21.
Wow.
So lesbian bars are rare, but 100% of them, or I should say, the same number came out of pandemic in 2021 as went into it. So yes, some closed, but new lesbian bars have opened up. And one of the things that was interesting to me in talking to lesbian owners of bars that serve women is these are not your grandmother's lesbian bar that are by and only for women. These are bars that are women forward, but welcome all people. Like, as a guy who always went with my lesbian friends to lesbian bars, I have gotten varying degrees of welcome, although I have always been let in. Although at one bar in college, they were like, you have to make out with a guy to prove that you're gay. I was like, I'm wearing a vest.
Fuck, like, I have so many vests. Oh my God.
My friends are inside. But these are bars that welcome straight men and that welcome gay men and are trans inclusive. And I think to some degree, that's what you have to be to survive in this market. The bars that were trying to be women's bars and police the boundaries of womanhood, I don't think that younger people go for that. And I don't think a bar like that can survive anymore. And I know that for some of our lesbian foremothers aren't so happy with that. But I think that's where the queer community is at right now. So these are gender inclusive bars. I mean, women business owners are disadvantaged in getting access to capital, getting access to business networking. So it's tough for women business owners in general, double tough for lesbian and trans women. But, there are very successful bars. It's just interesting that sometimes if they're too inclusive, they don't get classified as a lesbian bar, even though they're lesbian owned. Lesbians love the bar. It's just, there's also other people there too. And so on the one hand, that's kind of I would say it's a success story, and that places that are saying, if you have owners who are saying like, yeah, as a gay bar, we can't cut it here. I'm like, go look at the business strategies of lesbian bars, because they have managed to survive in the most difficult business climate, and they have the secrets for you. But also, I've lost that train. Something else about lesbian bars. Ask something else. It'll come back to me.
So that was actually kind of insightful, and you made some neurons fire in my head, because as a professor, I'm always thinking about like, how does this tie into class, or like, what's a way I can, do something interdisciplinary with someone, like maybe in business or, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of like, popping off what's in my head. Yeah. And I was also like, I think people underestimate like how attached we get to these spaces. Like, one of my favorite bars in St. Louis just closed, JJ's Clubhouse, which was like the leather/bear bar. And, I don't think that community has really recovered from that, because, and for those that don't know, like, leather bars are kind of like, you can really kind of let your hair down there, and it attracts a kind of different, kind of some ways non-normative clientele. So like when a gay bar closes, like that's an entire community that kind of has to like figure stuff out again.
Yeah, and the category I sort of lumped together, I called them cruisy men's bars, but bars that serve bears, bars that serve leather men, kink, BDSM subcultures, gay strip clubs. These are the bars that have seen the biggest decline over the last 25 years. I think more than 60% of them closed between 2007 and 2019. So they are the most in danger, even more in danger than bars serving lesbians or bars that serve queer people of color. Those bars, about half of them closed during that time period. But just like lesbian bars, cruisy men's bars have had to cope with the fact that younger queer people socialize in all gender groups. And so if you were a bar that was predicated on offering a single gender environment, you cannot survive, I don't think, except in the biggest of cities. You've got to be trans inclusive. You've got to recognize your gender non-binary patrons. And you have to find a way for some of the old timers who sometimes can be gender exclusionary, for them to get re-educated and to have their spaces, to have their kinks. But I just don't see these single, like, gay bars were very gender segregated in the 70s. You had men's bars and you had women's bars, and there wasn't a lot in the middle. During the 90s, the biggest thing that took off was bars where men and women were socializing together. And that became the most common type of gay bar. So, I sometimes say men's bars are not your grandfather's gay bar either. They're not just bars that only serve the men and that women have to wait at the counter for like 30 minutes just to get a drink order. Those bars still do exist, but I think they're on their way out, and I think they probably should be.
Yeah, I'll never forget the, I grew up in Indianapolis, and there were basically 3 bars, but one of them was known for, like basically harassing the women when they would try to go in there, and, telling them they couldn't take their person, or, just kind of general harassment. But yeah, even that bar, they like decided it was time to get a new door guy who wouldn't harass women and, start, serving the clientele, because times had changed.
And, as someone who appreciates leather bars too, like I get that there's a part of sexy, what Jason or Jay Orney calls sexy community. There's a togetherness that can be fostered in a kind of pervy, sexy environment that is powerful when you have repressed your sexuality and been given no sexual role models through your young adulthood. So those things are powerful. I just don't know whether those things can be 24/7 places outside of big cities. I think in most places, they become once a week or once a month nights. And I think having an environment that celebrates women, that hires women staff, women DJs, women and non-binary folks, and having a place that they can have that kind of communion is important as well. But it has to be a special night, and it can't exclude anyone else. And I think that's the recipe for success going forward.
So you mentioned something at the start of this that Marcus, if you got something, go right
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to talk to you about, like you talked about anxiety and feeling the anxiety. And as someone who's kind of been non-normative, not the most good looking at the bar, I've had my own anxieties, and like everything you described was resonating with me. What are your thoughts on that? Is that getting how did you get over that? And then do you think that leads to other problems? Again, I kind of know the answer to this, I think, but just kind of wanted to bounce that off you.
I mean, two of the things I'm trying to argue against in this book, one is this premature eulogization of gay bars, the gay bar is dead, let it stay dead. We've succeeded to get over it. That it was like a immature stage that we now have grown out of. And I think that's bullshit. But I also think the uncritical celebrators of gay bars are also really missing out on not realizing who got left behind or who gets left out. For me, the anxiety was also always part of depression. So there were so many nights I didn't go out because I just couldn't get out of the house. And the anxiety of being around strangers was just too much. Yes, I think for some people that leads to drinking problems or other substance problems. I think for a lot of people, it just leads to paralysis and loneliness. So you said something at the beginning of what else about anxiety? How did I get over it?
Yeah, how did
I got
you get
over
over
it
that?
because I became Harriet the Spy, and I have my little notebook. And when I go into a place, I'm not thinking is he going to find me hot or where am I going to stand? Instead, I'm like, oh, that's how they put their bar. Where the bottle? Oh, okay. How many people are in this room? What percentage of them are white? I'm just taking inventory, and then
you did
that
what
makes
I
me feel
did.
very confident, and that's how I got over it.
Yeah, you did what I did. You turned it into a sociology study,
which is a totally shitty way of living your life, and it's why my partner hates to go out to bars with me. He's like, "You're not working, are you?" And I'm like, "No," but then I text myself "Don't forget this thing that happened."
Yeah, I'm one of my friends. Another story for another time. He rightfully called me out on that several years ago, because we have this, we can study whatever we're interested in. We often choose the things that are relevant to our own lives, and then suck the life out of them, and so to speak.
For me, I was always ambivalent about gay bars, and so it was fine. It neither wrecked them nor did it save them for me. I always was sort of torn, and I think that's a fine way to be. I think ambivalence is a very queer emotion, and I think we're good at it. We have a lot of practice.
You alluded to something. I'm curious, what, are there things that are structurally different about how a gay bar would operate or have the drinks and the actual structure of the business versus a regular bar that you see on average?
So I didn't do any comparison. So, this is just my speculation is that gay bars have better liquor in general.
The drinks are
better-
definitely stronger.
Probably stronger, but just a better selection. I think
Why would that
many
be?
of the spaces are laid out pretty much the same. It's just it's not so much the physical architecture; it's more the social architecture.
Gotcha.
Have you trained your door staff to not call people "Hey girl" or "Hey dude"? Have you trained your door staff to use gender neutral terms for people as they're coming in? And have you trained your bar staff to not call people out by their first names on their cards in case that's not the name that they're going by right now? That kind of training, I think, really sets gay bars apart, or sets the good gay bars apart.
Interesting. Why would they have better drinks? What's your hypothesis on that?
I don't know. The liquor companies have always been advertising to us like, yes, we love our well drinks, but we also love our high-end cocktails.
Yeah,
Smart class, Greg. Come on.
I go to beer bars, man. I'm the beer snob. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, is that
Gay bars used to have shitty beer. Gay bars used to have and I would say you go to an old school gay bar, and if you ask for an IPA, they have to go searching for it because it's a bottle or a can.
Yeah.
It's not on tap. And for a very long time, at gay bars you could get 3 beers. You could get Miller, Miller Lite, and Bud Light, and that was it. And I came out at a moment when, for whatever reason, I don't even remember why, we were boycotting Budweiser and Coors. I think it's the Coors family is super conservative, and Budweiser did something that pissed us off. And so I drank Miller. It was the one beer that they had that I wasn't boycotting. And stupidly, I will still drink a Miller Lite and be very happy by it.
Looks like we lost a Grimlow, but
No, I'm here. I'm taking a bite of dinner.
oh, okay. We got you.
Yeah, no, he's embarrassed when he eats.
How are you on time? I know we said 8:15, but you're welcome to stay longer if you want, because there's definitely some other questions I got. But feel free to cut and run if you need to.
Hit me with your questions, and then when you all need to take over and drive this bus a different direction, you can just tell me goodbye.
So, I didn't realize this. It looks like part of your work touches on sex work, and I hadn't really explored that part of your work. Could you kind of maybe talk about that and because I've always been interested in this as someone who, I was always the guy who hung around drag queens and bartenders and sex workers in Vegas. And so I got to see a lot of stuff, some stuff I wish I could forget, but yeah, I was kind of interested in what you're doing with that.
I don't do hardly anything with it anymore, or at least at the moment. My first book was about, I became interested. The European Union was trying to harmonize everything. If you think back to the late 90s before Brexit and things started falling apart in Europe, there was this huge optimism, and the European Union was harmonizing everything. And they were proposing a common immigration strategy and a common welfare strategy and a common taxation strategy. And during this moment, rules about prostitution started going in crazy different directions. It was like the one thing that could not be corralled, at least early on. And so I was at the time sort of a Europeanist and interested in European Union politics. And so I did that research. I also was interested in a boy who lived in Finland, and this was a way to get research grants to go spend the summers with him. That was lovely. We're still friends, despite it all. But so I really got interested in this. I was interested in sexuality, and I was interested in governance. And so this was a case. I didn't have an emotional connection to the topic, really. And as I did that research longer, there are so many good sex worker researchers that I think they are better suited to do this work and to fight the fight. The other thing I learned in it was I thought I was studying different political systems, but really I was studying different feminist systems that were embedded in different politics. And I didn't realize I was walking into a feminist sex war. And I have no stomach for conflict. And talking to these women who I admired, who had high political positions, but who hated each other and were sometimes really disappointingly mean about each other. I just didn't have a stomach for that. And I think it's sex work decriminalization here in the US is an important topic. I support it. I try and support the sex workers who are doing that research themselves, because I came to feel like I was just too much of an outsider to do the work very well. I have a side project I'm doing with a friend. It's about sex work in early 19th century Paris. So these people are long dead, and I can sort of show my support without, in my limited way. That was my sex work stuff. I still sometimes teach a class on prostitution. People get mad. Why isn't a course on sex work? And it's not a course on sex work because I teach stuff about the countries that believe that sex and work is an oxymoron. They think sex cannot be labor. So Sweden, Ireland, now France. Sex work, they explode. People get really angry. Like you're saying exploitation is okay. And it's like, so hence I use the legal Latinate word prostitution and piss off some people, and other people say, why don't you call it, a course on the exploitation of women? And it's because we explore sex work among men and trans folks as well. So it's not just among women. So that was my past doing research with sex work. Maybe I'll pick it up again in the future, but right now, I feel as a researcher doing something for us, me doing stuff for us, like I have made more connections and gotten more thank yous and felt more connected to my own community doing this kind of research. So that's made me really happy.
I wonder
That's
how
kind of where I want to go next. Like how much of your identity kind of spurred you to do the research, or did doing the research almost like put you more in touch with your identity? I guess like what was the chicken and what was the egg?
I mean, it started because my favorite bar closed. And actually, it wasn't just that I couldn't get information about it. It was because the local journalists were like dancing on its grave. And they kept saying that it was a nowheresville full of drug dealers and prostitutes, and that it's so much better that now there's an art gallery and a vegan juice bar there instead. Which I know it sounds a lot like gentrification, but like I said, we don't really have. So I was pissed off, and I wrote this rant in a local magazine, and it made the developer mad. And he threatened my job or emailed the president of the college and demanded that I be peer reviewed or whatever that means. So I think my identity was implicated from the beginning. I think in doing it, I became much more I always thought I was wishy-washy in that I couldn't make up my mind about gay bars. And now I'm much more comfortable just saying I'm ambivalent about them, and that it's fine to just be on the one hand, on the other hand. I think that's a smart, grown-up, queer way to be. And so I'm just much more confident and comfortable in that. So I'm a better queer than I used to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's interesting that you kind of describe it just from a more personal, they're fucking with my shit type of perspective. I don't know how else to really phrase it, but it's that was my favorite bar. They're talking shit after they closed it, and that's what really spurred you to do this kind of work in the first place. That's I guess a more human story than I really hear from a lot of other academics when they describe what led them to do whatever it is they do. So that's actually, I think, really refreshing. That you.
And then I stupidly hatched up this project where I'm I'm going to go count the number of gay bars by municipality in all 50 states since 1972, and it took us 2.5 years to do it. It was the biggest pain in the ass, and I didn't get that I didn't even ask my friends. I just decided to do it. And I got little grants and I just did it. And that little piece has been cited more times than any of my other work. That little piece, journalists are contacting me all the time about it. Like, in some ways, it's the least science-y. Like, it's not testing a hypothesis. It's basic science. It's just reporting on rates. It doesn't link it to neoliberalism. It doesn't cite Foucault. It's just, this is empirically what's happening, and it took me 2.5 years to tell you. And that's what we wanted to know. Turns out, not everything has to be about Foucault.
I'm curious about your methods. Like, how do you classify a gay bar? Like, how is it, like, amount of people? Is it the owners? Like,
this is fascinating. So because I'm a sociologist, I don't try and classify things. I study the classification systems that other people have. So, like, one of the things that's super fascinating, Yelp. Let's just take Yelp as an example. Yelp has this, it's a mutually exclusive categorization system. So if you choose gay bar, you can't be anything else. You can't be a restaurant. You can't be whatever. So, like, in DC, there's a gay-owned brew pub that has crazily campily named beers. I think it's called the Red Bear Brewing Company. I want to say, like, their beers have names like Yas Queen IPA and stuff like this. So it's like very, very gay, but on Yelp, it's a brewery.
So what would you
also, when you go on Yelp and you go looking for gay bars, you will get all sorts of listings where you're like, why is, Pedro's Mexican restaurant a gay bar? And then when you scroll all the way down through the comments, it's like, the waiter was such a bitch. He was so gay. Or you have, like, I went there with my gay friend and we had great tacos. So, like, just mentioning gay pulls it up in the search results. So, Yelp has this both over and under sensitive system for classifying gay bars. One of the advantages I had was by relying on the Damron Guide. They had their own system of classification that was based on crowdsourcing with editorial verification. Now, I don't know how that changed over years, but it's had the same editor since 1992. So at least since 92, they've been doing things the same way. And I just accepted their system. Now, what's interesting about it is if you know one of these cities and you go looking through these guidebooks over the years, you're like, wait a second, it says this is a gay bar, but it stopped being a gay bar sometime. But it's still in the list. It means the crowd has not upsourced it yet. And so it turns out that this thing is wildly subjective. Things that are gay bars on Friday nights are straight on Thursday afternoons. You have restaurants that are, for all intents and purposes, are gay bars, but because they're making most of their money off food receipts, they don't get classified as a bar either by the IRS or by Yelp. So, then there's the question of, like, what about is a gay nightclub that has room for 2,000 people? Is that a different thing than a gay bar? And if it is, if a gay bar has a big dance floor, is it more like a club than it is like a gay bar that doesn't have a dance floor? Or even better, my first gay bar was an all-ages gay nightclub that didn't even serve alcohol, and it let kids who were 14 and older go. So I actually did get to go to a gay bar before I was 21.
Where was this?
Portland, Oregon, the City Nightclub. There's a great article about it in Willamette Weekly. It was owned by this. So I grew up in a small town way outside of Portland. And we all knew that the club was owned by a pedophile who liked to date 16-year-olds. We all knew this. It turns out this was a smear campaign by City Hall that was trying to shut it down for more than a decade. And they spread that rumor and had the FBI raid it, and that's what eventually got it shut down. But they never found any evidence. He was just a gay guy who his purpose in life was providing places for queer kids to hang out. And he got harassed out of business. But while it existed, it was glorious. I didn't know until very recently. Apparently, it had crazily like avant-garde drag shows. I was like, wait a second, I don't remember any drag shows. And I called my friend who I went there with, and they're like, yeah, I don't remember drag shows either. And then I kept reading all these reports, and it's like, oh, the drag shows were on Saturday night. We only went dancing on Fridays because we had to go to church with our families on Sunday. So we weren't going to stay out till 3 a.m. We were good little kids.
Does any of your research explore kind of the international queer communities? Because it seems like no. Okay, because I was going to say the drinking culture in other like more European countries like France or the UK, their drinking age is lower. Queer kids in that situation would be able to go to those safe spaces and be around their community.
Yeah, I have been to gay bars around Europe. They are different, but it's so hard to get your arms around one vast, diverse country. And I was kind of sampling for diversity. Mine is not a statistical representation. Well, other than the statistical part, the statistics are statistical, but the interviews I did were sampling for diversity and trying to look for the diverse strategies that were successful. So, I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot of everyday stuff. More
research required.
Yeah, and like part of me is like, I need to do a follow-up book that's like gay bars around the world, and I'll go to 38 gay bars around the world, and my partner would kill me. Like I would be single. I would either be divorced or murdered. So I will be very happy to have this book come out and then to see what happens next.
Okay.
Because I like being together.
Yeah, because where does the community go? What happens? That's a really interesting question. Sorry.
Any other questions?
Oh yeah, Greg, were you saying something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, Gremlo, it's a really interesting question. I mean, it's like because it's like again, like where does the community go? What happens? With such a different drinking culture. Not to say that it was all about drinking, which is the whole point, right? Because it's like kind of like a negative control for showing that like it's not actually has anything to do with it. I was curious, like just in general. I mean, I guess prostitution is so. I actually don't know how many counties. I know it's legal in Clark County with Vegas and Nevada. It isn't?
No,
the brothels?
It's not legal in Clark County or the county that's Reno is in.
It's
okay. Specifically forbidden in the 2 largest counties in Nevada.
Oh, okay. So like the Bunny Ranch Road and all that kind of stuff are right outside of those counties?
Yeah, Pahrump and all of
gotcha.
They're right across the county line. And all of those little cards, the little sort of trading cards where people are advertising their services, those are illegal.
Oh man, dude, that they're really annoying. But I'm curious, like how do those counties fit with like the gay bar like hypothesis? Like, are they linked at all, or is it completely independent?
Well, one thing I would say, and this made a Swedish researcher very unhappy, is when you live in a country like the United States where there is no social safety net, and where you are at risk of being thrown out of your family if you're queer or trans, our communities are more interlinked with sex work than other communities. And so I certainly have dated people who told me like, oh yeah, I used to turn tricks when I didn't have a place to live, or, oh yeah, I was young and running the streets and older men would give me money for sex. So like, that is not a strange thing for me, but this scandalized some Nordic feminists who were like, you're aiding and abetting the exploitation of children. And I'm like, that's America. Like, America aided and abetted the exploitation of people because we want you to be an entrepreneur, but not like that.
That's a good way to put it.
We want you to sell your labor, but not under your own conditions. So we'll make it illegal. So
can't have that.
One of the, in in the Nordic countries, for the most part, prostitution is defined as the exploitation of women. Like that's part of how it's legally defined. And so they prosecute the buyers of sex, but supposedly they don't prosecute the sellers because they're prosecuting the offending party. And many sex workers are rightfully outraged about this and say that this is just a backdoor way to go and prosecute sex workers. But I guess my sort of from the outside perspective is, if part of the condition for having a social welfare state there, if part of the deal is you're not allowed to sell sex, then it's hard for me as an American to come and critique that. What I can critique is how you treat the migrants who come and sell sex, and that you say that you're protecting them by deporting them. That doesn't seem to fit with the values that are being espoused. But, I guess I'm a little too much of a cultural relativist sometimes, and other times I'm just a pragmatist.
Speaking of
Same
pragmatism,
problem I have.
speaking of pragmatism, what would be, like, let's say we're at City Hall in a city and we want to support like queer communities in our city. Like, what would be like the step forward? Like what do you like? Yeah, I guess open-ended for you.
Vote for candidates. That's a cheap, inexpensive, well, it costs you some time, but voting, number one, and that includes for local people. I think when someone in your community is being hate swarmed, I think sending notes of support to supervisors or city councils and saying, ignore the Proud Boys who are swarming over you right now, it'll go away, and stay strong. I think that's something pragmatic you can do. I think going to a drag show is something pragmatic that you can do. And because gay bars are not just for gay people, gay bars are to promote and celebrate queer culture. And so if you are there to celebrate and promote queer culture, then you belong there. And you can take your cues from your queer friends. And if you don't have any queer friends, you can take your cues from the people around you. You notice none of them are touching the drag queen's hair or trying to grab people's breasts. Instead, they're holding out little dollar bills. Like, get your dollar bills out, go to the show and tip. And I think going to the gay bar when you are not gay yourself, and going on a maybe not so busy night with one or two other friends, not in a gaggle, and just talking to the bartender and say, how is business? We wanted to come show our support. What do you guys need? I mean, I don't know what the local gay bar is going to need, but you never know when someone says, like, God, we just had our plumber canceled on us, and where you're like, hey, my brother-in-law is a plumber. He might come and do the job for, a discounted price to help support you guys. Like, those kind of connections, those sort of local support, I think that can really be meaningful.
Yeah, I just want to say my wife and I's like default date night stuff is just go to a drag show, and it's so much fun.
Drop the money.
Yeah.
Though I will note, if you go, where was it we were at? I think we were in Mickey's in West Hollywood, and I actually got kicked out because I did not know that you couldn't like just give the queen dollar bills. Like, they have a line, and you're supposed to drop the money in the bucket. And here I was doing what I always do in every city, which is throw up the dollar, and next thing I know, we're getting kicked out. So
I think that's something you can do in a big city gay bar, and I don't think it's something that you can do outside of the big places. Like, there's a bar in New York City that's kind of famous. It has this sign that says it says straight women, no woohooing. And I get that if there's a big group of people screaming instead of tipping, that disrupts the ambiance of the room. But I actually think that that's probably relatively rare. And I think it's pretty easy to take the temperature of the room by looking left, looking right. How are the other people doing it? And then doing that. And if some of them have money out and you've got money, I think money is a good way to start.
I might have had one too many cocktails too. So
Yeah, it's usually
Well,
like good. Yeah, if you're, it's like the strip show. The same thing. If you're at a strip club, you don't like if the people, the seats right next to the stage are the ones where people are going to be tipping the most. So it's like, but yeah, it's like,
right. Don't eat your wings there.
yeah, exactly.
You can eat wings at the strip club, but don't go eat them there.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, it's been a minute since I've had some good bar wings.
And now that's just
Okay.
making you hungry.
Mm.
So I have a question because someone in chat kind of brought this up, and this I think goes back to the notion of, I guess, like what spaces are either safer or how can we take advantage of spaces that we have for sort of like visibility events. The chatter in question is a librarian, and they've tried to hold like drag queen reading events at their library, but those in charge have not let them actually set that up. Gregor, I guess to ask, do you know of any other like activities they could try and like hold at their library that would, I think, kind of serve a similar purpose? Which, like, what comes to mind when I ask that question? I know it's a toughie, and I don't necessarily expect like a perfect answer, but maybe just brainstorming out loud for the librarian in chat.
I think inviting local queer authors, local genealogy groups, even who are themselves not LGBTQ. But I know one of our local libraries was like, how do you do genealogy to be sensitive to the fact that some of the people in your ancestry might be LGBTQ, and how might you know? I think inviting any of the local service organizations to give a talk, whether that be PFLAG, which used to be Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and now it's just an acronym that stands for We Are the Family and Friends of All Queer People. I think any of those kind of talks would be a way to show support in a way that as you spread the information through the local community, like people will appreciate it even if they're not able to attend. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, I think that answered the question. Something that's not like overtly like come look at people in drag, where it also kind of hits that same note of like visibility of queer people, that there exists, and you can kind of have meaningful events and discussions in public without having it be like overtly visibly queer.
I don't know. Maybe you just need to start inviting a drag queen to all the events just randomly.
Yeah, I think that's honestly a really good idea, because I think there is. So I have kids, and we go to the local library a lot, and there's kind of like a way that like kids events happen. Like for example, a majority, like we go to story time at the library, and a majority of it like isn't story time. It's like kids like ball time, and they're like throwing up balls, and they're singing and dancing and that kind of stuff. It's not like you're just like reading the entire time. It's like enticing people to read at home. You're getting people, like, it's a cool thing to do to go to the library, and then they read because like, oh, the person that did the thing liked this book, so now they want to read it too. And I think that's kind of the same way that drag could be introduced, where it's like people can be kind of like introduced to drag, to like wear your own costumes, mix and match, be your own thing, do it, and the kids can have the power to do it. And I think that's like for example, make like for a story time thing, like make like a costume time or something like that. Don't even call it, just like be whatever you want, and then you could prance and everyone can talk about everyone's outfits and what you are and all that kind of stuff. Empowering.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's because of the rising popularity of drag artistry that is both why people are opposing it and also why drag story times are popular. And I understand that if you're in a place that's dependent upon culturally conservative people for your funding or your local political support, I can understand that that's maybe a bridge too far, and I think that's fine. I think there's all sorts of small and little ways, sometimes just having the book in the library, I know, is a fight. just to have the book be present. And I think those are fights worth having. And gay people will send you the books for free if you're not allowed to get them yourself. So you can get them in the library.
So what's your thoughts on, we hadn't talked about this yet. Marcus, if you want to take you go.
No. I mean, I guess like that was just a quick follow up because said librarian was also noting in chat that they're actually having that like culture war fight over books because some anti-gay folks came and just like checked out all the books and aren't going to give them back. So I guess like if they were to reach out to like gay authors, queer authors, would they just like send them books for free if they're in a library?
Yes, I think so. And I think the other people to get in touch with is the Librarian Association, the National Association of Librarians. Like I don't know the name of the National Association for bringing up that name, but it was the first organization that had a pro-LGBTQ policy back in the 70s. Like librarians have always been there for us. And I think there have to be people there who can help strategize about what are the ways that you thread the needle between having the information there for the people who need it. Like, I wish I knew that, like that, but there are experts out there. You're not alone. There are other librarians who are facing this. Librarians and social workers are my heroes. So I know that you're fighting the good fight, and I know that you're doing what's best for what you can do right now. But yes, authors, if you write to an author and say, yeah, the cultural conservatives took all their books, do you have a copy of your book you could send us? I bet you get more than one, and I bet they're autographed.
Yeah, the local city halls have open committees and commissions, on these boards that have huge sways over this kind of stuff. So like one of my favorite ones, and when I'm gonna move recently, coming up, and I'm gonna try to get its spot on the library commission because the city that I'm talking about that I'm living at right now, I mean, they have a multi-million-dollar budget every year. It means a lot, for 300,000 people. This is kind of like a community hub where people can do 3D printing, they can do podcasting, they can do video production. It is so cool. And it's all free and accessible. And I think that would be a good way to kind of like talk about these values, bring that up. Why aren't we funding this? If you're on the board, you have a say. And they're unelected. A lot of times you have to go through, and the city council will kind of like vote on who gets on these positions. So if you email your city council member, maybe they can help you get on the spot. But yeah, it's a good opening.
No, I think that's great. My kink is municipal governance.
Oh my God, me too.
I'm on the zoning appeals board, and I'm a public utilities commissioner.
Oh, good for you, man.
No.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Oh,
I can get you a shed, variance on a setback, and I can tell you where your electricity comes from.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's fun.
Dude, I would love, we're doing another podcast right now about municipal governments. So for real though, I think people don't realize how much of their everyday is dictated at the local level. Our media is all national, so our politics are national, and our gaze is all national. So I think that's why people get so nihilistic about this stuff. But I feel like the local government is such a good way of having a huge impact on people's lives.
And I think, this is where if your local library is getting blowback, I think going and talking to the librarians, and, people ask me like, what should I do for my local gay bar? And I'm always like, go talk to the bartenders. Like, don't talk to me. Like, every local gay bar is different. Every little local economy, every community needs different things. Like, don't ask me, go ask your local bartender. How are things? What can I do to help? What do you need? And if they're like, why don't you come? And you're like, well, I like going to this other bar because there's a trivia night. Well, it's like, well, fucking start a trivia night at the gay bar too. Like, can't have too many trivia nights or karaoke nights.
So true.
There's never enough karaoke.
And I think I'm...
I disagree, but...
How dare you? You just haven't seen me perform, Professor Q.
I mean, clearly.
I was in rural Tennessee, And as I was driving away from the gay bar, or I was starting up my car, I heard the first sounds of Nine Inch Nails' Head Like a Hole. And as I drove away, I could just hear somebody screaming into the microphone. And that was karaoke night at the gay bar in Johnson City, Tennessee. And that made my day.
Nice.
Okay,
That's
that would have made my day. Like when I lived in Vegas, karaoke, big in Vegas, by the way. Who would have known? But
sure.
you wouldn't see any Nine Inch Nails, but you might see a great person trying to do Elvis, and that was always fun.
I'm sure there's
Is
so many
Elvis
people trying to
gay?
get discovered at like karaoke in Vegas. Oh my god.
It's pretty wild. You see
Elvis
some
is
interesting
straight
stuff.
culture.
Agree.
Except for drag kings. I guess when a drag king does Elvis, then I'm interested. But otherwise, anyways, guys, I have to go.
Alrighty. Thank you so
All right,
much.
It's been a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you all for your questions, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about my stuff.
That's
Dude,
been really
thanks for
fun.
coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we very
Thanks,
much
Chris. We'll see you all later.
Adios.
Bye.
That was pretty insightful. He's a really nice dude.
I like him.
I like I said, we had a lot of people involved with that book project, but he was one of the slickest in terms of like ease to deal with, and just generally pretty nice and helpful.
It took everything in me not to make a Game of Thrones joke about his name.
He might have enjoyed that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just kept that to myself.
Yeah. No, you might have gotten away with it.
Okay. Gregor Clegane, the Hound.
I mean, you could have dropped it during the booze discussion. You call him
Well,
Gregor
yeah.
Booze Hound.
Yeah, or the chicken part, chicken wings. All these fucking chickens.
Shut the fuck up and get me more chicken. Oh, that was a good character.
By the way, I wanted to mention to you guys the episode last week. What I heard, really great job. I was so sad I wasn't here for that one. But yeah, it looked like you all had a good time.
Yeah, it was good.
I think, and Dr. Miller, I think, was also very insightful. I mean, it's really helpful to like get people on here to have these conversations, just because, like, at least for me, I'll only speak for myself, but it's like I see different ways of thinking about things, or like different strategies to use when like talking about issues that I never would have thought of. Like that, I think is really truly emblematic of diversity of thought when we actually get to like have academics share what's in their brain. So, I mean, first of all, like shout out to you, Professor Q, for putting these things together, because obviously, like this isn't something that gets to happen on the internet, let alone Twitch every day, is academics like showing up and like giving little seminars, basically.
Yeah, I still, I was trying to recall like how the fuck you guys found me. Anyway, because I don't stream, right? And I'm just very happy to be part of this because, it's kind of cool. I like public sociology. I've always been a big fan of it, even though it doesn't get rewarded in the academy.
Well, I know too, since I'm going to start like combing my academic necks of the woods, so to speak, for potential guests, Greg and Graham, like, I mean, this really applies to anybody on the panel, but if there's any way, like if you have a guest you're interested in, whether they're, an academic or not, either say something, or if we need to like abuse our academic credentials to do it, then we'll try and make it happen.
It would be, at least right now, a dream come true if we could get that sociology or that gender studies professor that was on the Matt Walsh interview on. That would be a dream.
Oh, that guy. Oh,
That's
shit.
a good idea. That's a good idea, actually. Like
That's a
giving
really
him
great
an
idea.
opportunity to have
know-
the discussion that he thought he was maybe having, or I don't know if they're genders, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the video again to see what their name was.
Oh, I'm gonna ruin my search history. I'll have to go delete this.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean, I
still,
can probably find the clip on my Twitter, Marcus, and then you can just go from there. That way you don't have to search it.
Yeah, fair enough. That actually might be a good idea. You can link it in Discord and
Yeah,
then go from
I
there.
got you.
Because I think like Professor Q, you and I could probably reach out. I think you would have to be included simply because what you do is a lot closer to what that professor does than my bread and butter. But that I think would be really interesting. It almost might be worth going through that exercise of like, okay, here's how you should have handled this, or let's try this again, type of deal.
I mean, the real big fish guest would be Cornell West.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, dude, Cornell West like shows up to like fucking less than 10 viewer Andy sometimes. Like Cornell West might actually do it.
That'd be really cool. I've been a fan.
Or Professor
for a
Wolf.
while.
Yeah, no, when Professor Q was talking about the critical theory seminar, I was thinking like, yeah, Richard Wolff would be a really, really good one just because he's a no nonsense type of guy. Like,
Yeah,
just straight up fucking tell you how it is.
yeah. I wanted to educate me while talking down to me.
Condescend to me while you fill my brain with knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't ask Gregor that I wish I would have now is, within the field of sociology, you have all kinds of people studying different types of things. And I wonder, I mentioned this just a little bit when we've gotten together about how I've kind of been marginalized, I feel like, due to what I study. And since he kind of runs a parallel track, I just kind of wonder if he's also experienced that or whatnot.
I mean, it wouldn't be surprising. Like, it wouldn't be surprising if that's something that's also happened to him in some capacity. I think it's probably not like, entirely unique to you, but I'm sure, like you said at the very start, especially because like you reached out to him, if you guys were in the same area ever, or if you both were at like the same conference, I'm sure that would be like the first question on your mind over some actually good alcohol, maybe at a gay bar.
Yeah, he's actually so Gregor's putting on a lecture series with the ASA, so conference panels that looks pretty flippin' amazing. I may try to hit him up, pick his brain on some stuff.
Yeah, well, and maybe too, since that's like a whole big thing. If there's any colleagues there at the ASA who want another platform to nerd out, like that's the time to ask them about being here.
I might hit up my my sociology professor that taught my class, because she does women and gender studies. She does modern problems and sociology. So maybe there's something there.
Yeah, maybe. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I'm sure you probably, like, since that's someone who like taught you, you probably have the working relationship. But if you need to rope any of us in, just say so.
Yeah, I mean, I could just email her. I still have her phone number, so I could probably just call her.
Oh, dang. Okay. No, you're on phone number terms. That's pretty cool.
Well, we were doing like online classes, so everybody had her number.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
it was a COVID type deal.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Is there anything else, I guess, on the note of pride or anything we've talked about tonight that we want to expand upon, or are we content with wrapping it up here?
All I'm going to say is I had a fantastic flipping time marching in DC Pride, going out chasing boys, being chased by boys.
You're living out your teenage glory days here.
Yeah, maybe more like my 20s, but
Did you bring
yeah.
your orb?
No, I did not bring my orb. But I was waiting for something to happen in DC. Alex from Q Origins said there was some chatter. Turns out it was in Idaho. So it passed without incident. So hopefully the rest of the month goes smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on that, like, is there anything new to the Nazis in a U-Haul situation that we all probably haven't heard already?
Well, I mean,
Not that I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, if any of you were in chat today and yesterday during my streams. One of the people who was arrested, their mother actually like came out and spoke to the media about how they fell into that group and how she's trying to like publicly like show his face and his name and the community he's from, so that maybe the stigma will get him to leave it. But I'm afraid that kind of ostracization from both his own life and that group are going to lead him down more radical pipelines.
Damn, that's wild. Like,
Yeah, she needs to reach out to Life After Hate.
Yeah.
seriously, like that's just like he's already publicly shamed enough by like being arrested as part of this. Like, it's just adding more gasoline onto that fire. I don't think that's going to help.
Yeah,
I
especially
looked through
being
those-
young.
True.
I looked through those mug shots and I just I have a feeling there's a couple closet queens in that group.
Yeah, the
Really?
Rocket Blue Steel, that one especially.
Oh,
he
yeah.
stuck out to me. I was like, yeah, he in another life maybe he would be in a gay bar like performing.
Yeah, alternate
mean-
universe. He's like, the LGBT Antifa.
A couple of them had pretty perfectly groomed eyebrows. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
My eyebrows have never been thick enough to be able to do anything with, so
I just got a lot of like systemic inbreeding vibes. A lot of like Oblivion NPC looking dudes.
Yeah, I think it was like one or the other. They either fall into like failed character creation screen or in the closet and looks, like they could be the leadership of the collection of failed character creation screen characters. Like it was just like there was no in between when I took a look at those mugshots.
that was my feelings. You took the words right out of my mouth.
But damn,
So-
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I have a kind of broader question we can maybe end on and bring it back next week.
Yeah, sure. I guess this is more, towards the Lane Baron chat. Like the shit, like the Nazis and the U-Haul thing. Like, I get that the whole point is to like prevent people from going out to Pride events, but like when I saw it was Patriot Front, like I removed their fucking stickers in my town all the damn time. So for me, it was more of a like I know this like group of Nazis is active where I am. It's probably best that I like just kind of stay out of the large congregant events like that, just to avoid any other events like that might be in the pipeline for retribution's sake. Like they got us this time, we're going to be sure to turn up the intensity in another area where they're having an event like that. So that's just my disposition.
Yeah, I hope they get charged
Speaking
with
of-
terrorism because it's obvious, like intimidation and violence for political means. It's terrorism. So it's just, and the problem with our media is like everything is all about. I don't know. I don't see the public call to action to like have these right-leaning like hate figures, hate mongers like coming out and denouncing this stuff and saying how bad this is. It's just this huge obfuscation of like, we would never, nobody would ever, have my stuff and then do these things. And it's, these people are just acting out the things that, Tucker Carlson and et al. Like say, and it's just, it's gross. It's awful.
Yeah, and the chief of police in that town, when they did their public statement, said that we've been getting a lot of calls to our department. About half of them are in support, telling us that we need to release them. And another big streamer on the platform, Carter, that's his hometown. That town
Ooh.
is the founding place for the American neo-Nazi movement. So it's no coincidence that they chose that town.
Yeah, no, one of my best friends, he was born and raised in Boise, but he always was like, yeah, shit in Coeur d'Alene and in the surrounding areas is just like white supremacist central. It's fucked up.
Yeah. Well,
So I
what
got
I wanted
interviewed.
to... No, go ahead, Professor.
I was just going to say I got interviewed by the local newspaper. I'm not sure if the story ran about, basically they were asking me like, hey, could this happen here? And just kind of my thoughts on it. So
Yeah, if you find a link, shoot it to us.
Yeah. Also, community member Alec Gunter, also a streamer, posted a video of him at his city hall. He's in Ohio, and the Ohio Children's Genital Inspection and Sports Bill is
the
up,
fuck?
and yeah. I'll send you a link to it. It's actually in my Discord in the content suggestions, but I'll link it in the ministry as well. Very good thing that he did, and it's like an incredible video. But what I wanted to kind of bring up was this is something I've been like hesitant to talk about within my streams because I don't know exactly how to approach it. But with all of this violence, and maybe you guys can, enlighten me a little bit, or we can bounce some ideas. With all the violence that's happening towards not just the LGBT community, but it's Pride Month, so of course that's what's happening right now. The idea of community defense and like people getting firearms. I don't know if today in our time if that's a efficacious approach. Obviously, like home defense is necessary, especially if you're part of a marginalized group, but doing any kind of like organized community defense program, I don't know if that's like the best approach, because oftentimes when we see people who are part of marginalized groups begin to arm themselves, start to say like, no, we're not going to take your abuse lying down. We start to see that as like a provocation from the right, that they see that as like a challenge to their machismo. So I don't know exactly like what the approach is, and maybe you three have some ideas.
Yeah, because like when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously
Black Panthers.
Yeah, and I think like if we were to sort of recreate that in modern times, insofar as if there's something of a similar size like Pink Pistols, I know that's an LGBTQ plus organization that trains queer people how to shoot guns for self-defense reasons. But I don't know if you were to like sort of dial up the openness about it. If you had queer people open carrying hot pink AR-15s or with rainbow paint out in the streets during Pride, like what would that actually look like? And I think, like you said, that would almost be sort of an incitement of right wingers wanting to do violence, because they would view that as oh look, they're now wanting to combat us on our level. Let's duke it out. So
I don't recommend people go to any kind of protest or demonstration armed, period. Like ever, no matter what your cause or group is, don't do it. It's just not good, because the cops, especially if you're part of a progressive or left-leaning group, don't look at that fondly.
And I think that's the other thing that would come into the equation is the police, right? Because the police obviously are not really there to help many people in general, but marginalized people especially, and especially if guns are in the equation for marginalized people trying to protect themselves. If a cop sees people at Pride with weapons, whether it's legal or not, cops will harass you or even potentially shoot you themselves, depending on the situation. Even people of color just trying to exert their right to carry legal firearms. I think that was what Philando Castile. Dude just got killed for having a firearm legally for self-defense reasons by a cop. So it seems like there's so much stacked against marginalized people that like adding more guns into the equation isn't necessarily the best solution. But I think there is potential in that idea of like community defense. And I think to some extent there is strength in numbers. I think that was going back to what Gregor was talking about with gay bars. That's one of the aspects of safety, is that you are among people like you, and there are a lot of you. It would take a lot, the police to start some shit like the Stonewall riot. And at that point, you already have a pretty crystal clear idea of what's going on and who's responsible. And that's something that's really just bigger than any one person. So insofar as like, a particular group of right wingers like Patriot Front or Proud Boys or the others trying to incite violence against, lone marginalized people walking around or smaller scale events. Yeah, I think if you just juice them up with numbers, if they're, if they're going to be sort of going into an even more openly public space, unless they have the cops like directly on their side, I think that might make them kind of be more hesitant and to question whether or not this is really, the kind of terrorism they want to do that day.
Yeah. Now, like, I'm all for groups arming themselves if it's done responsibly. As far as like being armed at events, I think that has to be done very, very carefully. Like take Coeur d'Alene for an example. If there were at the Pride event a group of trained, certified to carry group of people who were doing security, and it wasn't overt, it's not a bunch of tactical people out there that are doing security for that group or that event, I'd be okay with that. Part of the LGBT community is they know who they are, they're part of the community, they're part of the neighborhood, and Patriot Front shows up, I mean, there's somebody there to protect them because we know the cops wouldn't. I don't know.
I almost kind of want to talk to a historian about this, especially as it pertains to Stonewall and the like, just to see if, in the past there were any equivalent groups that like fulfilled that role and that purpose.
Yes. In San Francisco, there were a group, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, and I've been trying to remember it. It's somewhere behind some alcohol-infused memory. But yeah, it was a group in San Francisco who basically patrolled the streets back in the maybe 70s. And because the cops weren't protecting LGBT people. And I believe they wore pink shirts, which is how you kind of identified them.
I have something from 2017 from the Mercury Times. Armed and ready, LGBT groups arm themselves against hate crimes. I don't think that is the timeline we're talking about.
No, so yeah, there's been a resurgence recently, but yeah, historically there's been groups. If you might be able to find it. I
guess
thought they were called the Pink Panthers, but
that might be the case. Wrong. It just kind of goes back to like the conversation we had today and last week about like the optics, and I hate kind of like worrying about optics, particularly for people from like groups that are being targeted, but that is kind of the world we live in, where whatever you do will be used against you. So I don't know what the proper strategies are forward. More, I don't want to use the word covert, but more, close to the chest organizing in that regard. Probably a good strategy.
I mean, everyone's, check your local elections right now. A lot of people are having their sheriffs going up for election. So, when you're voting in the primaries, make sure that you're researching who you're voting for, and you can, maybe if they're doing public events or something, go and ask them, make overt, public, questions. I've had like a phase shift, man, like how I see a lot of this, what's going on. Like, I don't know. I just had this thing where it's like, it dawned to me that like these politicians and especially these hate groups and stuff going, like they're all live streaming themselves. Boebert's sitting there making this video of her like, oh, I'm going to go to this rally and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, dude, like politicians are like just streamers nowadays. That's all they are. Yeah. They're just streamers that hold like positions of power. But like in these scenarios, for example, those people that came to the drag queen story time, I think it was in like San Francisco or something, and they were filming themselves. I was thinking about that, like what would I do with my kids in that scenario? And it's like, like my initial reaction would be like, oh, talk them down, we're the majority, all that kind of stuff. But then it kind of dawned on me, I'm like, well, they're just making it content. They're just like, they're a content drone. So if I'm just like, okay, yeah, whatever, and then just go in the other room and like, let's just continue reading, let's lock the door and make sure that he doesn't get in there. And, but yeah, there is this weird thing where it's like, I hate to say it, but like, where is the security? How are these people getting in? You know, like that's another like huge room of people, and these guys are extremists and they're likely armed. You know, like these are the kind of people that would carry or concealed carry, maybe legally, maybe not. I don't know, but like, holy shit, like we have to like protect these areas more. I feel like this is, you know, becoming like more of a problem. I don't know if it's increasing in numbers. I don't know if I'm just seeing it more often because these people are content drones, but like, man, it just seems to be happening.
Oh yeah, I mean they're all content goblins. They're all. I mean, we even saw that with the January 6th hearings, and on January 6th, every one of them has their phones out. There was a government representative who filmed himself like breaking into the Capitol, said his name, and said what crime he was doing. So they don't feel any consequences, and it's a cloud economy. That's how you gain like prevalence within your social spaces online. You show yourself doing the real shit, and that's what they do. There was a video of John Doyle, another like fascist within the online politics space. Him and his goons went to a drag queen story hour. And they're all outside. One guy's like trying to force his way into the event in the door, and they're like blocking him, and he's just laughing the whole time, filming himself. Oh, they're not letting me in, they're censoring me. And the only thing you can do is stuff I can't say on Twitch to get those kind of people out of there. Nobody catches strays anymore is what I'm saying.
Yeah, awkward silence.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
I mean, how would we do this? Okay, so let's let's take it another point. Like, how would we do this if it was just like some like nobody streamer, and they're trying to like in real life like do this kind of stuff? You know what I mean? Like, what are the other ways that if it wasn't just like these people doing drag queen story times? I guess like what were the other methods, or how would we like try to? I don't know. It's just it blows my mind that like one, they're able to stream these things. You know, it's filled with hate, and blows my mind that like, I don't know. It's just really frustrating.
I mean, it requires organized security.
Yeah.
There were groups of people outside of the event that I was just talking about who were like out in front of the place trying to block people from being there. The cops were between the two groups, but the cops didn't try and get them across the street. So it's up to, you know, the community and their neighbors, their friends to literally put their bodies on the line and, you know, stand between them and these fascist groups.
Yeah, I mean, there is like I think about like the, just for like our library, you know, there is someone outside, and it's like, you know, I don't know, it is a public library, but like, dude, you know, the kids event is actually before the library even opens. So if there was like a group of like five dudes, I'm sorry, they're all white men.
They're all dudes.
Sorry, but, like trying to get in, I'm sure they'd be like, well, what are you doing? Like, why should they go in? You know, this is the same reason why, like an elementary school, like, should there be like some random 18-year-old that's going in to an elementary school in the middle of the day? You know, it's a little weird. Why are you doing that? You know, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's just weird, man.
Yeah, they project pretty hard. But yeah, I think it's just incumbent on those groups that are trying to, you know, provide these kids with something that they can have that normalizes their community, that, you know, allows them a space to be themselves, whatever it is. Even like these drag queen story hours things aren't even like exclusively for like queer kids, but you know, it's on those communities to make sure that they're not being infiltrated or trying to be stopped by these dickheads, you know. And I would say you know, read up on the kinds of organizational tools that have existed in history that people can utilize.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage. I was, you know, trying to think about myself, like what would I do? What should I do? And it's like, it's almost like, I don't know if like counter protest is the right term, but just like showing up, up in numbers, because it seems like the right wing encourages people to, you know, show up at these things. You know, they're very good at mobilizing. these people that are like really heightened, man. They are like super heightened. They're like at an 8 or a 9 on these issues, while it's like these are very important issues, you know, but it doesn't seem like people on the left are like mobilizing at the same rate. So it's
because we're all working.
for real. But like just going and showing up, like, and showing up in support and doing you know, I feel like that would be, even if you don't have I guess I just contradicted myself. Even if you don't have a kid, just kind of like show up and see like how things are doing or what it's about, or I don't know. I feel like I don't know, man. It just feels like there's a lot more people that I think are understanding of that message of love and compassion and understanding, rather than this hateful message that they're putting out in these crazy conspiracies. Like, you got to be way down the Fox News rabbit hole to even have this stuff make sense. And then once you do watch the videos and stuff, you're like, this is it, you know? And I don't know. I just guess transparency and I don't know, just like going and seeing for yourself probably is a good idea.
Yeah. Be there to support them. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, Grim, I think I'm kind of like coming around and agreeing with you. Like, I think it's probably time for a modern Pink Panthers at the rate we're going. Like,
And I'm so hesitant to tell people to do that because I'm scared of the blowback.
I'm totally. I will never buy a gun.
But
That's again, I've said that multiple times. That's just me.
But the thing is that, like, okay, so the reason why that, even if you're never going to have a gun, why you want to take a gun safety class is because if you're ever in the presence of a gun, you're able to like look and make sure the chamber is clear. There's nothing in there. You're making sure that the safety is on. You know how to handle a gun. You know, I feel like that isn't a, you know, like that's not extreme, you know, because sadly, because of the prevalence of firearms in the United States, you know, having those skills as a necessary part of your day to day, like it might come up, you know. When I was a kid, you know, people did bring out their father's rifles or whatever like that. We weren't like making stupid Instagram videos where we're shooting each other like with with nothing in the chambers or something, pointing them at each other. We were like disassembling them and reassembling them and that kind of stuff. But like because of my training and going through and shooting with my dad, like I was able to make sure that like and check the guns myself, make sure that they were safe, you know. So at least like I'm in control of the situation somewhat.
yeah, I mean, you know, for any given marginalized person, I think it's somewhat of an imposition to ask them to like take up arms in self-defense, but I think at the same time marginalized communities need to realize that somebody, especially probably from within, might need to do this in the current like violent spat of times that we've got right now. And it doesn't have to be forever, but people would feel safer at these kinds of events to some degree if they knew that there were sort of the
good guy with a gun
Marshall in the crowd somewhere with a gun. Like,
See, I have a different take on this, and this may be because of the uniqueness that was Indianapolis. We had Steve, who I just found again on Instagram, who he's a cop, and he was a big part of organizing police in Indianapolis to like A, come out, but also B, support the Pride festivities. And I know there's been a lot of talk at like DC. That was a big deal. People were really upset that the police were there, and they were really upset that like they were putting like gay pride stickers on their guns. But I'm a lot happier to see those people there, because if something does get out of control, I don't know. I guess
are you talking about cops specifically? You're happy to see cops?
I'm happy to see them involved in at least the planning of Pride events, because there have always been protesters where I've attended Pride, and there's always been that possibility that something could happen.
Well, but I mean, at the same time, like, what if the cops are, feeding information to groups like Proud Boys and Patriot Front because they're involved in the planning.
I guess that's something I really, like I said, I hadn't considered. But there definitely is that crossover. Oh shit! Before we forget, next week, Sam Perry and oh gosh, it's the white Christian nationalism episode. I can't believe I'm spacing on the name.
So we have 2 guests, is what you're saying?
Yes, Andrew Whitehead. Oh gosh, he's from my alma mater, Indiana University, Indianapolis, and so Andrew Whitehead and Samuel Perry, they wrote the book, "The Flag and the Cross: Taking America Back for God." They got a lot of publications together, and they are the it boys right now for studying this kind of stuff.
Nice.
When I was in DC at Pride and was promoting the show, there were people very interested and very jealous that we have both of them coming on. So
Nice. Sounds like very pertinent to the times with all this stuff going on.
yeah,
Because that's
I
who,
imagine they're in
that's
high demand.
that seems to be the move, that the right is always rebranding. It's like they're like Blackwater, man. They're Zoo, and now they're whatever Z or whatever. I don't know. They've been like 5 rebrands for Blackwater. It's the same
Or
way.
Academy now.
Oh,
With an eye.
thank you for keeping track. But like, damn, dude, like now it's this weird. It's not alt-right anymore. That's failed. That was like dead. Now they're like this white Christian nationalist thing going on, and it's like, what is it's like a weird theocratic turn that like it didn't seem like the alt-right was they're into. So I'm actually really interested in like how like religion's playing a part.
I mean, yeah, and they've got some great data that I don't know that they've published on that I want to pick their brains about related to QAnon and kind of the overlap between QAnon and religion. And from what I know, it's not exactly what you think. So it's actually, it's kind of like when Lucas came on. There's kind of a weird, non-intuitive curve in the data. So, little appetizer for people to show back up next week.
Yeah, because it's like weird because like the churches, at least the stats a couple years ago, like churches were like attendance are down. It's not like more and more people are identifying as religious, in the Pew survey polls and stuff. More and more are non-religious or atheists. So it's like it's just a very weird bent that's happening right now. It seems to be very. I don't know if it's just the media covering it more, but it definitely seems like it's happening more often. That's just my anecdote.
I mean, media probably doesn't help. I mean, you could probably interpret it from a couple of different directions. People who are religious, if they see, attendance declining in church, then, they'll interpret that as, a sign of great moral decay and be compelled to act upon it, possibly through violence and stochastic terrorism or just regular old terrorism. But then at the same time, too, like, more and more people identifying as non-religious or even outright atheistic, like that's just going to create even more tension, and a lot of those identifications come largely as a consequence of life experience, lived experience dealing with either the religious or the institution of religion. So a lot of those interactions, and especially as they're portrayed by media, are probably going to be full of animosity and probably hostility to some degree going both ways.
Yeah. Definitely seems to be a big dividing line.
Yeah, and when they come on next week, I'll probably try and pick their brain about my my very first roommate when I got here, who wound up being basically a Christian dominionist, white supremacist type. So that'll actually be really interesting to sort of approach that from an academic perspective, to be like, okay, how common is his, belief set? Is this just like your run-of-the-mill Nazi? Is this an advanced Nazi? Like, what was going on there? So,
Yeah, no, they have the most. So the other person I know in this area, he actually graduated from my program, think almost a decade before me, maybe only 5 years, but he wrote the book American Swastika, and his work's all qualitative. Their work is all statistical, and so they have a lot of the fine numbers, but they're not stats dorks. Like, they can actually tell the story in a way that I think should be entertaining to everyone.
Nice.
Good. So they're not a bunch of STEM Lord Petons. That's really encouraging to hear.
Oh, dude,
Not
you have no
yet.
idea. Some of these social conferences I hate going to because it's like they don't package it in a way that
Yeah, and they don't tell stories well. They don't actually talk about bigger pictures, and they hyper focus on small shit. Like that dude who emailed you about the Salon article, trying to defend the work of Tom Sheff. Like, if you did that in Hassan's chat, he would have banned you permanently. Like, that's the kind of like hyper focusing, stun lock inducing gray name type shit that you have to put up with constantly, and it's so dumb.
after the exchanges, I feel a little better about his initial response.
You've been going back and forth.
Yeah, there's an email chain. Yeah.
Oh man.
yeah, I think I think his heart was in the right place. It was kind of soul crushing because that person is a pretty big name within the field. He's known for coming up and coining the phrase racial projects. So he's progressive minded, but anyway, let's not talk about it.
You take your duty as a corresponding author very seriously.
Yeah.
I like to, sometimes I even respond to the really negative ones. Like, I've gotten some weird stuff over the years. So a lot of it I ignore if it's really out of touch. But, gotten a lot of emails from gay men who have read my article about sexual racism on Grindr and feel seen and called out. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all I'll say to wrap this up, with respect to that dude who emailed you, no genius is irreplaceable. So don't let any worthiness in the field justify shitty interpersonal behavior between colleagues. I mean, literally, in fucking infectious disease, we've got Nobel Prize winners doing conspiracy theories about lab leaks and shit. So
Jesus, it's true.
to the sun proverbially, not in real life, in Minecraft. It doesn't matter.
Anyway.
That Nobel stuff.
Anyways.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, literally, I think that's what a lot of academia needs to understand: is no genius is irreplaceable. But anyways, that's a separate conversation. Anything else we want to hit? Any other notes, or are we content with wrapping it up here?
I think we're good.
I'm just happy to be back and happy to be very, very much recharged.
That was a cool conversation. I like the municipality stuff. No joke. I would love to have like a municipality, like how to, why do, all that kind of stuff. Like that would be a cool Ministry of Science, I feel like. And
Yeah, I mean, especially if you have like a guest that would, offer some insight to that, because I mean, I'm not going to like start that conversation because I have some like talking points as far as like why it becomes difficult for scientists like us to really interface on like local municipal levels. But I don't want to like, prematurely make these points. So I'll save it. But especially if you have somebody you can bring on, that would be awesome, Greg.
from my world, I mean, I volunteer at a nonprofit that run through City Hall, but I actually don't like hold any board positions or committee positions myself. I just know about it, and I know about that being a huge way to get involved, and I do want to do that in the future when I do move. But yeah, it sounds like Gregor has a lot of experience with it, which would be cool to talk to him more about it.
A lot of universities, and this may be true for the one he's at, require, so like the first university I was at, one of the requirements for tenure was you had to spend 2 consecutive years volunteering for an outside organization.
Well, that's cool.
So I chose Kansas City Gay Pride Festival. Little did I know the university was ran by homophobes, and that didn't set well with them. alas. But
Weird.
but I think there's a lot of universities
still,
out there that do that.
Interesting.
So
I see the opposite. I see like nobody from the universities involved, so that'd be cool. That is
I
cool.
mean, you're at a R1 though, and
Yeah.
R1s tend to not have that. These more teaching schools require this kind of outside service.
Interesting.
You know, it always depends on the institution. You know, I find value in that kind of work. It's just a shame that I'm kind of always on the move as a visiting, you know, so, you know, I want to get somewhere stable where I can lay down roots, but, alas.
Alrighty,
Agreed.
I think this is probably a good stopping point, especially because I need to take a very quick bathroom break. But let's go ahead and go around the horn, do our usual shout outs. So, Grandma, you're first on my screen. Go for it.
Grimlow on Twitch, guys. We're live every day on the Partner Grind tomorrow after our normal streaming hours at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to be on Jason Society's birthday charity stream. He's raising money for Innocence Project. Going to be joined by Creative Ganja Queen, F Bombs, Hunter Avalone, Madam Genevieve, Mike Lightyear, Rhizome, and Send Streams. So it's going to be a big panel of people hanging out.
Oh, nice.
That
I'm
is a
Professor Q, and you can't find me anywhere else but here, except on Twitter and as seen on the Washington D.C. Gay Pride Festival with Stonewall Climbers. Gay as fuck, yeah. Be gay, commit crimes.
in
Hell yeah.
Minecraft.
Hypothetically, in a video game,
Yeah,
GTA.
Great, go ahead.
My name's Greg. I have a YouTube channel called The Peer Review, but check out Gremlow's channel because it's my favorite Twitch channel in the morning. For real.
Sweet. All right. I think we're good. I didn't know if there were any more syllables coming after that. All right, cool. Well, thank you all for being here for another episode once again. And then, Greg, rewatch the VOD at some point, see if the audio fixes made things sound better. So,
Yeah, man, we'll do.
Oh, speaking of
I will
watching
say-
VODs, recent episode of Civic Duty just went up on YouTube a couple hours ago.
Oh, sick, man.
woo.
Perfect.
fuck yeah, I watched some of that live. If we do another ministry category, we need to make the questions a little harder.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. I have to brush up on European stuff for the next one because it's going to be all like EU and Australia people.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I can get some Euro frogs to come up with some European flavored science questions.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, you let me know if that's another category you're putting in. And have a good rest of your evenings.
Alrighty.
Later, folks.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty. That's it. Hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you soon.